There we go. Okay, so welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Today we are talking about, for our small talk, I'm Alana Herrera. I'm the curator here at the Transcona Museum.
And my name is Jennifer. I'm the assistant curator here.
And today's talk is all about 5 items or more in the collection and just how they help represent the museum, but also sort of give the essence of our collection. And our collection is wide and varied. But before we get started with our talk, we will be giving the land acknowledgement.
So the Transcona Museum resides on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, as well as the homeland of the Métis Nation.
So once again, thank you for joining us. So Jen, you're the one who came up with the idea for this talk today. So let's how did you come up with it?
It just kind of came to me one day because we always are talking about our favorite objects and the collections and what we can share with our publics. And there's only so much space that we have in our galleries to showcase off, the 50,000 plus objects that we have here at the museum. So this is a great way to, pull out some objects that people may not have seen before, we may not have talked about. And these are also objects that are, fascinating to us that we utilize in different ways to help tell the story of Transcona as a community, as well as, it represents the mission of what we do here at the museum.
So as Jen mentioned, we have pretty much over 50,000 artifacts and archival materials in our collection, but we do have a number of significant holes or areas we are missing items that would really help round out that picture to help tell all of those Transcona stories. One thing that we're lacking in is a lot of materials or items related to women and women's work. If they were a business owner or if it was a stay-at-home wife or mother. Our collection is largely male-centered, based on businesses or significantly more male sports teams or organizations we have in the collection. Even military-wise, we have one World War II women's uniform. We would like to get more of those to help tell the women's perspective, the female perspective during the World Wars. We also are lacking pretty much entirely of anything that is LGBTQ plus in our collection, and so that is something we want to be able to tell the whole community story, and right now we don't have that with LGBTQ plus or recent individuals who've moved to Transcona who did not necessarily always just live here, grow up here, have strong family ties to the community. But what does our community look like today? Who are the people in our community? What are their stories? How did they end up coming to Transcona? What are their life experiences? A lot of that is missing from our collection as well.
So we're always looking at filling those gaps, and there's so many objects, like we said, that we want to talk about. We won't have all the time to talk about them, but we'll mention some of them towards the end. But what do we want to talk about first?
Well, why don't we do the fire?
Ooh, one of my favorites.
Yes. So if you want to turn the camera on for the other one.
It has been a while since we've done this. Please bear with me here.
Yeah, we've done a lot just directly through Facebook. So you'll have to just ask me to turn on video.
That is not an option.
Okay.
Technical difficulties.
So I think what we need to do here. Let's try that now.
Yes, there we go. Huzzah! Okay, so I love doing a lot of deep dives, historical research into early Transcona. Because I'm really interested in fleshing out the early years of the community. Now, unfortunately, one of the downfalls is there was no newspaper in Transcona from about 1918 to 1931. So that is a huge gap of history that I do not have. So I have to get very creative with how I go about researching the early community. Photographs, we do have some pretty spectacular photographs, but they can only tell so much, they can only paint so much of a picture. So I like to refer to the fire insurance plans quite a bit. So what they were, there are a series of detailed maps. What's visible on the screen right now is the overall view of the fire insurance plans. But then there are also color-coded zones that will give a more detailed picture of a particular section of the community. And this captures roughly to about, I think, the mid-20s or mid-30s. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. But it shows buildings that were once, along the main strip of Regent Avenue, some more on Victoria Avenue, or some of the other, business streets that surrounded our downtown zone right here. Milena's just opening up some of the more detailed plans.
Sorry, it was backwards. So this is like Ravelston.
So you can see the homes that were there. What's also great about this is that it has the lot plans, or the lot numbers, I should say. So if I have a plan number, which for this one would be 38, I can go look up that plan number, and I can get other map views. I can also, cross-reference this a lot of the time with the voters lists. The voters list, the early ones, they used, a number sequencing code for a residential street number, basically. So it's a lot of cross-referencing back and forth, trying to figure out where in the community this house may have been.
I'm just trying to find Regent.
Yes, the Regent one is pretty great. So Regent would be...
I'm going backwards now. I have to go the other way.
And it's not complete. We are missing a few pages out of this, actually.
Whittier again. Just skip ahead a bit. What does this say?
Oh, that's a neat one right there at the bottom. So that's some close-up views of the roundhouse, as well as the grain elevator in North Transcona.
Which we actually do have a video on our YouTube channel all about the Transcona grain elevator, which interestingly enough wasn't actually in Transcona, but it is referred to as the Transcona grain elevator. We have been asked in the past to do history and get information on a particular house or piece of land, and having the lot plan number was what enabled us to go to land titles to actually track the ownership for the family, because that's what they were looking at.
Land titles, that was the name I couldn't remember.
Oh, this is the creosote plant here.
And everything here has also been color coded, so it'll indicate if it was a wooden structure, the type of exterior built to it. So if it was a brick facade, if it was a residential home, if it was a business center, all stuff like that. So that's really great too, to try and identify, okay, is this a house, a dwelling, is this a business?
Yes. I'm still trying to find Regent.
It's tucked in there in the middle somewhere.
Yeah. Yale, Victoria, Melrose, Connecticut. So Oxford, that's now Day Street.
So you can see the hotels along Day Street. You might be able to.
Oh, here we have a tailor, a pianos, a grocery store.
You'll have to tip the camera a bit more. There you go.
Yeah, this is Regent here.
So that's the other side of Regent, which it was just past the main business district. So not as many buildings.
Yeah. So there was a secondhand store, potato and furniture store. That's interesting.
Because you go for your potatoes and your furniture all in one location. And you can see too, it's been pasted over, so it has been updated. This would have been updated every couple of years. So it's accurate to an extent.
Yeah, the date on here says 1923.
So this one would have been updated to 23. There are other ones in here that would say, you know, the later 20s or early 30s.
And maybe this is the other. Oh, no. So this is showing like Curtin Park. But Jen, you use this
all
map
the time,
especially for the history of Regent Avenue small talk that we did as well.
And as well, one of the couple times going through this too, the plans, they're also the plans for South Transcona. So that was a really great jumping off point for trying to build the history, the early history of the South Transcona community. And we did a small talk on that, and I've done a blog series on it as well. But it was, you know, if you haven't read it, read the blog or seen the post, it was to be a huge community of like at least 8, you know, housing districts. There were setups for the fire department and there's churches and schools. There was a pool hall. So that's all captured in the fire insurance plan as well.
So this is Regent Avenue. So this Bank of Toronto building, that's the building we're in right now. So the Transcona Museum, but just showing the tailor shop. That was the first Bank of Toronto building that is now our parking lot. As we go, and this one is 1931. We just show all the different businesses up to Oxford, which is now Day.
See the theater, Safeway. There used to be a Safeway along this the stretch of Regent here. Lots of tailor shops, lots of barber shops. Not very much on the other side of Regent. There used to be a number of buildings along Regent, and then there was a fire in 1915 and it burnt most of that side of the street down. So it was slower to kind of recover. But yeah, so using this as a jumping off point to cross-reference with the voter list, early photographs, other types of information that I can find. So this is a way I can build the early history of the community even though I don't have certain resources available to me like the newspapers. So this is one of my favorites.
Yeah. Okay. So we can do another one. This one, just gonna put this back on my gimbal. Close this up. What's the next?
Well, why don't you talk about this one here?
Okay. We're gonna switch spots.
As graceful as possible.
So this item is essentially like, I don't know what the proper term for it would be, but it is a book that's showing the different types of stitches or sewing techniques that I am assuming that it was a young woman learned. Can you see any names?
Blanche G. Jackson from Normal School, Winnipeg, November 12th, 1912.
So we have a few examples of things like samplers in our collection, but this is showing the different types of stitching that people used, women, but also tailors, how to sew, because, you know, clothing was still sewn by hand a lot of the time. So it's showing examples of how to do a patch, or how to do the different types of stitching. And it could have been an assignment for school. It's like, this is something that you learn. I watched a number of YouTube channels where they make historical clothing using historical methods and techniques. So I just find this really interesting. It's also an example of something that we have from a woman's perspective, possibly a young woman. We don't have actually another hole in our collection. We don't have a lot to do, or a lot of artifacts and things with children. It's kind of sparse with children. So this is likely something that a young child, young woman, did possibly for school. So that's called French hemming. So the different methods and techniques, and like, I know about 2 stitches that I can do, but looking through this and seeing the different techniques, I find it really interesting. And it can tell us about, you know, how individuals repaired their own clothing, sewed their own clothing, how they looked at clothing, and not the fast fashion that essentially is happening a lot today, where you only had a few pieces, but care was taken with them, repairs were done, and just showing the different ways of repairing your items and the uses for them. I just find it really, really interesting. And I've never done much of this. I took home ec in high school, and I learned how to use a sewing machine. And I have done some hand sewing. I've made a pair of mittens, and I've made some moccasins, but I have not done stitching and elements like a lot of what is shown in this book. So I find it super interesting because this is one representation. We, you know, our samplers are other examples, but it's skills that were taught to young women and possibly young men too, just how to care for your things. So that example of reuse and repair, and just the preciseness of this book.
It's also in pretty decent condition for it being, you know, 1912. Just looking at it, I mean, the pages will yellow a bit over time. That's inherent vice in the paper. Also too, and this is a question we sometimes get, you know, is this something that we would take apart? I think if it would become detrimental to the fabric within the book, we might consider taking it apart, but it's a complete object the way it is currently displayed.
Yeah.
Right? My biggest concern would be the tax.
Yeah.
But so long as we keep the temperature and humidity, which is something that we do monitor all the time, this should be a resource, you know, for years to come.
It's one of mine. It represents, you know, early settler life here in the community coming up, just how people, you know, day-to-day life activities are also shown with that. So that was my pick for my next one.
I do not use this gimbal very often. Okay. We could talk about that one.
Oh, okay.
At the helm of the camera.
Yes. This next one I think is really cool, and the fact that we have it just makes it even cooler. But this is the very first piece of mail that was ever hand delivered in Transcona. So Transcona, prior to 1958, you went to the post office to get your mail. You would have had a box there, given your address, or it was even general delivery. They'd look up your name, your address, and then give you your mail. But in 1958, that's when door-to-door mail was started here in the community. And so this was the very first piece of mail that was ever hand delivered. And it was delivered to the mayor of Transcona at the time. And that mayor was Paul Martin. And this letter is from the Postmaster General, William Hamilton. And we actually have a photograph of Paul, the mayor at the time, Paul Martin, receiving this first piece of mail. So I don't know, you know, to actually have that here at the collection to show the changes that were happening in the community. A couple years later, Transcona actually became a city. So, you know, the community was changing, the community was growing, and to have this representation of that growth and development and how things were changing is really, really quite awesome to have here at the museum. It's a favorite of mine. And this hasn't been on display all that often. The fire insurance plans, just because of the size and the condition that they're in my time here at the museum, they've never been on display. The sample book, that's been on display at least once in the past few years, but not that often. And what we do here at the museum, because we have such a large collection, we rotate our exhibits through, so we try to change them every year. COVID has put, you know, a little bit of a delay on that. So, but we typically try to change our exhibits once a year, so items can rotate through, so we can bring more items on display, but then also tell different stories, because this community is full of stories that need to be told, and we're trying to bring those out. So I'm going to switch places with Jen so she can talk about the next item.
Just while we're transitioning, just the voter list that I had mentioned. So this is from 1915. This is the earliest one we have, and we have voters lists, electors lists that go up to, I think, the 50s. So really great resource. Yeah, why don't we do this one?
Okay. So,
oh, sorry.
Just take the tag off. It's hard to see.
So as you might already know, one of the largest objects that we have here at the Transcona Museum is a historic locomotive 2747. It was the first steam locomotive built here in Western Canada at the Transcona shops in 1926. It ran for the railway, Canadian National Railway, for about 38 years until about 1959-1960, when it was pulled off the line, and it was later donated that same year to the community of Transcona and placed on permanent outdoor display at what was then Kiwanis Park, now Rotary Heritage Park. And it's been there since 1960 on display. It changed ownership a few times until we acquired it in 2015. And as I said, it is our largest artifact. It's so large we cannot keep it here at the museum.
It's also the heaviest.
Even to move it, that would be a little bit of probably a headache. So it's going to stay where it is. And as many of you know, we are running a capital campaign currently to build a shelter over 2747. So we're doing really well. We're on our way, but that will protect it from exposure to the elements. It'll also increase our ability to have, you know, people visit the engine. We'll have interpretive panels, you know, and to continue to do work on the engine by our volunteer crew. So if you want to find out more, visit our website about that. So our next object that Alana is displaying here is the High Neighbor Sam hat. We have a couple hats like this in the collection, but you know a lot about the High Neighbor Festival and its history, so I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah. So the High Neighbor Festival first started in the late 1960s, and it hasn't run every year. Almost every year there's been periods of time where it hasn't run, or there was another festival in the late 90s called Transcona Is, and that was sort of done in its place until the High Neighbor Festival got up and running again. And then because of COVID, it hasn't been able to happen for the past couple of years. After the celebrations for the community becoming a city and the 50th anniversary celebrations that happened in 1961, I found a letter to the editor in the papers, and someone suggested, like, why we need to do something like this more often. It was wonderful celebrating this community and getting people to come out, and it would be really great if we could do this more frequently. And then a couple years later, the High Neighbor Festival started. So I don't know if that person, it was an unsigned letter, so I can't tell if that person was on the committee or did anything like that. But it's run sometimes in June, sometimes in July. It actually happened in August for a period of time. And it's a great, it started out as a way to celebrate the community and to promote the local businesses. And it's definitely grown. At one point, it was like 4 days long. It would start on a Thursday and then on Sunday. Now it's typically, there might be a Friday night social and then the Saturday, Sunday events in the downtown area here. And, you know, people waving and during the parade and saying, "Hi, neighbor." It's just a way to bring the community together. And I don't know of another community within the city of Winnipeg that does something similar to the High Neighbor Festival. Transcona really still does have a feeling of its own community. Here within the city of Winnipeg, we amalgamated into the city in 1972, but prior to that, we were our own, started off as our own separate town and then our own separate city. So to have this community festival, which is carried on, you know, it's been over 50, 2014 was the 50th year since the first High Neighbor Festival. So we're looking at like 56 years since, or so, 57 years since the very first High Neighbor Festival. That's a long time. That's a long time, but it's great that Transcona celebrates its community spirit, promoting the local businesses and activities and things like that. So that's another reason why I said that we should put some sort of representation. It's not only High Neighbor Festival, but of that actual community spirit that is here in Transcona.
Right, so we have one more
item, and this is actually multiple items.
It's rather special.
Yeah, and you might have got a sneak peek on the box, but in September 1st, 1949, one of the worst rail disasters in Canadian history happened, and that was the Dougal train wreck. And what we have in our collection here is we have a number of printing plates that were actually used by one of the newspapers to inform everyone of what happened. And the Monackey special, the camper special train, was coming in from Monackey towards Winnipeg, and at Dougal it was to have taken the siding, but they didn't, and they collided head on with the Intercontinental number 4, and the speed at which they collided caused a number of cars on the Monackey train to actually derail. The camper special was actually, it had a steel baggage car at the end, and then it was wooden passenger cars, and those wooden cars were lit with gas lighting. So it was a number of things that made the disaster even worse. The steel baggage car pushed into the wooden passenger cars, causing them to derail. When it derailed, the pinch gas lighting in the passenger cars ignited, causing a fire. And the speed at which it was going caused injury. So there were a number of individuals who were actually killed in that disaster that happened. And people from Transcona and other neighboring communities all rushed out to help. And so we have in our collection, like I said, a number of the printing plates showing what was happening, as well as some of the plates of the individuals who were killed in the train wreck, in the disaster. And there are still people within the community of Transcona that have a strong connection to this. A former board member and a committee member at the museum here is connected when his father was killed, because the crew of the camper special coming in from Monaco were Transconians. A number of them were. And there were some that actually survived from the crew. There were 2 members of the crew, and there was actually a CN higher up guy who was on the Monaco, the camper special, so he survived as well. So from the greater corporation of CN, there were 3 individuals that survived the wreck. 2 were crew. The rest of the crew were injured, along with a number of passengers. There were only minor injuries of everyone on the Intercontinental, because it was an all steel train with passenger cars and baggage cars, so it didn't derail, didn't have the pinch gas lighting, which caused the fire. And then the train also derailed right in front of a fuel depot, which was then also ignited, so it made the fire even worse. But there, everyone was coming in from the lake at the end of the year, and there were 2 trains that actually left Monaco that day. The first camper special made it to Winnipeg, no problem. It was the second. I remember taking this exhibit to Railway Days, which happens at the Winnipeg Railway Museum, and meeting people who were actually on the first camper special train. And they said, they had thought about taking the second one, but you know what, they were ready. They just went home early. With some of the victims, there were essentially whole families that were killed. There's a great video done by the History Channel called Disasters of the Century, and they have one on the Monaco train crash. We have it here at the museum. But you can also, I found it on like History Television, and it sometimes plays online as well. So
there are 3 monuments commemorating this. There is one at Dougal, at the site of the crash. There is one at Brookside Cemetery, where there's a mass grave. And then there was another one, it's in Monaco or Malachi.
Yes. A number of individuals were unable to be identified due to the fire that happened. So there is a mass grave. Those individuals who were able to be identified had private burials, but the majority of the individuals are buried in a mass grave at Brookside Cemetery. So that is our, sort of ended it on a bit of a negative note, but that tragedy greatly affected the community, the people here. It actually changed how things were done. I believe it was after that the gas pinch lighting cars were eliminated. There was inquiries into how it happened and why it happened. So there is stories on this and how it affected the community, and it still affects community members today. I'm just going to check. So now
it's Q&A time.
Yeah, Q&A if there's any questions, and maybe we'll just turn off that camera. Yep. And I can check on Facebook to see if we have any questions on Facebook, or if you're watching on Zoom, feel free to leave a collection. So Jen, what's something else that we didn't show but we have in the collection?
I mean, another one of my personal favorite is the first mayor of Transcona's chair. Colin J.E. Maxwell was the first mayor in Transcona in 1912. He was only mayor for 8 months, and he decided not to run again. The community was very saddened by this. They wanted him to, re-elected for another term. He said, no. So they gave him the mayor's chair as a thank you. So it was a couple years ago in the summer, I got this email saying, we have the first mayor of Transcona's chair. We would like to donate it to the museum. We're out in BC. So this chair, in its 100+ year history, has gone from Transcona to Montreal, back to Manitoba, to Lake Country in Manitoba, all the way up to, Vancouver, BC, all the way back to Transcona. It's in remarkably good condition. It has a plaque on it, so it's very easy to identify it. And it's just a fantastic piece of early Transcona history with a really fantastic story.
We have a number of the honor rolls from World War II, one that was made by an individual from Central School. We have one from the car department. We have one from the stores department at the shops. We have a World War I honor roll from Knox United Church. Yes. We have the HMCS Transcona ship's wheel, a replica of the bell. We have the city proclamation for the city of Transcona here that we store in the archives. We have that.
We have a slide collection of 30,000 slides. So when we say we have 50,000 objects, it is a considerable amount for the size of our building, but the archive skews a lot of that. Mm-hmm. We have, I don't know how many photographs, over 10,000 plus photographs.
There's a comment on Wix saying that the High Neighbor doesn't have a U on it, and that's because it was a different spelling at the time.
Yes.
I don't know exactly when the spelling, because Canadian spelling is different than American spelling. So all of the early High Neighbor items actually don't have the U in neighbor. And I don't know when the official spelling changed to the more British version of spelling, but that's why there's the U. We also had a comment on Facebook that the woman's, Kim's late husband's grandmother was supposed to be on the camper special, but lost her ticket. And so had to come on the local the next day, and that missing ticket was never found, and that could have very likely saved her life. And I met other people who decided to take the first train. So there's stories like that. The Dougal Women's Institute actually created a book called Memories of the Dougal Wreck or something like that, where they interviewed survivors, families of victims, people connected to the Dougal train wreck, and they sold that book, and that was to raise funds to build that monument. That is out in Dougal.
So actually excerpts of that book, because it's no longer in print, can be found in Barbara Lang's book, From the Window of a Train, or Memories of From the Window of a Train.
Right. And we actually have a copy of that book here at the museum. We have one in the archives, but we also have one in sort of like for reference if someone ever just wanted to look at it. I mean, we have all our butterflies and moths, but we've given talks solely on those. So we wanted to sort of avoid some of that. We have an archaeological collection. We have a natural history collection here at the museum. We have a lot.
We have a lot.
And this is just a brief snapshot of some of the things that make up our collection and how they tell the story of our community.
So if you don't have any further questions, I'll do a bit of a wrap up. So thank you so very much for joining us today. If you have any questions or comments after the fact, please leave them on our Facebook. We'll be posting the video later on to both our Facebook and our website and our YouTube page. We have another talk coming up next Tuesday, which is going to be about the Transcona cordite plant. So stick around for that one, because we've been doing a lot of research and have been finding out new and interesting facts.
Like a murderer who worked there. Ooh, clickbait.
So that's happening next Tuesday at 12 p.m. Then we're going to take a 2-week hiatus, and then we're going to have 3 more talks after that. Snapshot part 4, so looking at the community in the 60s through our slide collection, our negative collection. Icons of Transcona, so looking at some of the weird, wacky, wonderful mascots and symbols that make up Transcona. Flamingos abound. And then our last talk for the summer session will be the Transcona Connection, so looking at interesting stories rumors, tales, connections that many people may not realize about Transcona and our
Mhm.
connection to, Al Capone.
Al Capone, historical events, people who the Olympics, like there are Transcona connections out there.
Ooh, and I'm gonna name drop. There is a fantastic story from World War II about
Oh,
a
yes.
local boy who was saved by a Hollywood
Hollywood.
starlet.
Yes.
So that one is going to be really fun. So
Yeah, we're putting all of those together right now. But we hope that you'll join us next week and then again in August when we start back up. And if there's no further questions, I want to say thank you for joining us today. And we hope you have a great week. And we'll see you next week.
and just really quickly, if you like what we do, please support us. You can donate, you can join our mailing list, you can follow us on social media. We post a lot of stuff to our website as well, so there's tons of information on how to, RSVP to a lot of these events. So thank you so very much, and we hope to see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.